assume it's okay. There we go. There we go. I got the confirmation of sorts. Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Okay, welcome everyone to this new edition of the Ecma TC54 Task Group 2 for the standardization of package URL and verse at Ecma. Before we go into the deep of the matter, I remember everyone that this meeting is subject to a code of conduct. I've pasted the link in the chat. This meeting is recorded and we'll publish a transcript after this together with the video. We have the running notes link in the chat also, which we'll use to tally attendees and then also publish final notes. The first item of business is going to be to validate, accept the last minutes of the last call to make sure we all agree to these. And then we'll do roll call to take topic items for today. So, review of last call minutes. I'm pasting the link again in the chat. Where is this chat? There. Too many. I'm a man of 500 windows all the time, and if I have a browser, there's 500 tabs in each window. Okay, so you have the meeting minutes there. Is there any objection? Otherwise, these are approved. John, Michael,
no objections.
Nisha, Matt, Steve, any objection? Approved. Great. And then let's go through a roll call in terms of topic. I'll start with you, John.
Nothing for me. Thanks, Philippe.
Michael?
I already posted 3 items to the menu, to the agenda.
Okay. Salve.
Yeah, I've been following around the implementation of package URLs and verse in the Raku programming language. We've bumped into a bunch of minor issues, and I'm hoping that Liz Matthijssen will be joining us when she's done with dinner in a few moments. So I'll leave her commentary to her,
okay, so
yeah.
Perl and verse and Raku. And Nisha, is there a topic you want to bring up?
No, not today. I'm just listening.
Okay. Matt?
Nothing significant. Waiting for next Wednesday community call for the big showing of the website.
Great, awesome. Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to know the status of the conformance section. Do we have that text written yet? And then we need the text for I think the Perl type definition on down. So basically the remainder of the document in terms of textual content so that we can go through it and get it Ecmified.
Okay. And on my side, I'm double checking the running notes and Michael's agenda item. But what are your items, Michael?
I'm sure I can think of more, but those are the 3 more urgent ones.
I don't see them. I'm blind or what?
In the running notes agenda.
Okay. Overview of Perl spec and okay, yeah. So the topic there we want to address: overview of Perl spec restructuring, Perl and verse restructuring. Yeah, license for the spec. That's an interesting topic. And website confirmation. That's maybe more of a topic for Matt and maybe for the community too. All right. We'll start randomly with Steve. So status of conformance section in the Perl spec. I don't think we have any of that really written at this stage.
Well, so that ties into the sort of this
structure.
restructuring and how we want to do the documents. So I can cover that. Let me get also that was.
Yeah, and the second topic, Steve, which is to have a kind of a blurb introduction about the Perl time definition. We don't have that either.
Not necessarily the blurb, but the normative text.
Normative text, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are both on the to-do.
Yeah, they're on. I mean, yeah, I think I understand, but I have some questions about it, Steve. So I think we can.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so I'll start with the overview. So Philippe and did a ton of work to get us into the schema world. So we've had major updates to the Perl spec repo, and then also splitting off to a Ver spec repo. But this is still a work in progress. John and I plan to work with Philippe to get this pretty much wrapped up no later than the end of next week. But there's just a lot of bits and pieces to deal with to make this happen. And I'm part of that's error checking in various files for misspellings and things like that. But the more important work is going to be particularly for the focusing on the Perl sec first, is organizing the documentation. So I posted in the minutes, but I can share my screen also. Let me share my screen quickly. So this is Chrome tab. Yeah, okay, that's what I want to share. So this is can you see people see my screen? I hope
We see a cat video at the moment.
a cat video. Okay, so this is an issue I've had out there for a while that I've been updating as we go, and the piece of, I mean, there's work to do on the schema still and all that, but the key here is how do we organize the documentation? So again, we have at the moment 2 large files, Perl specification RST, Perl types RST, and the plan is to break those into more granular documents that correspond to particular topics or particular parts of the Ecma standard. So on the particular topics part, for instance, I'm proposing we have a file simply called build Perl MID, which is the .md, which is the how to build a Perl content from the RST, which can be further updated. Perl types, again, general information, and parts of Perl, that's the Perl string. So just basically breaking these into a bit more granular pieces and changing them to MD files. I changed a few MD files, just the code of conduct, things like that already. And then within that, my latest proposal is that we have a subdirectory called Ecma, where each of the documents corresponds to a part of the Ecma standard document. So I don't know. I mean, that really comes to you, Steve, but I think that's a way to approach this. I'm not completely clear on the process of how you put it all together, but I think the proposal here is around helping people using the Perl spec repo understand what things map to, and if they want to make a change, they can make a change to an individual document, not to a large RST file. So that's a big piece of it. Within that is also for the I can draft the section 7. I think I've got that listed here. In the Perl test schema, that will do that as a separate section from section 6. So there'll be 2 sections with the schemas. I still need to figure out how to mock up what the tables would look like, and I'm not sure again exactly how that process works, Steve. But first of all, I wanted to just socialize and get any feedback on the idea of organizing the documentation this way. We'll need a little help from Philippe with Gitfoo to keep the audit trail from the RST file to the MDs. But conceptually, we were ready to make this split. And then Philippe showed us that, as far as the RST files go, we'll have a form of a redirect. So, the RST files are not going to be deleted for quite some time because we have external documentation that refers to them.
Like CycloneDX, for instance?
Yeah, only one reference. So
No, but
yeah.
so the idea there, by the way, is just to keep the Perl types and Perl definition restricted text files with a single line which says a document redirected has been republished at this new URL.
Right.
We cannot do redirect in restricted text or markdown, as far as I know, but at least this is visual, and that means we don't leave dead links behind.
Right. So I'm looking for feedback. Now or very soon, I'm looking for feedback on that structure.
I love it.
And also, I'm assuming through magic that I don't understand exactly, but that the website team and with Docusaurus will be able to pull these documents from these individual files and display them on the website, which is going to be our primary public face for the documentation. And obviously, we would have more files over time and so on. But basically, that this is a way to structure it that's more granular than today. And obviously, some people want to update 4 or 5 documents at once. That's fine, but this gives us more granular control. So anyway, I wanted to socialize that, and that'll be one of my tasks this week, Steve. I need guidance from you on what you prefer. I can just mock up that Google Doc that I did before with the new information, if that's convenient enough, or I can point you to various documents here in the repo.
Pointing pointing directly to the documents here, I think would be fine. There's no need to involve a separate Google Doc at this point. I like the structure. My only comment is that I fear that over time that the Ecma docs, for example, Perl types or whatever, the Ecma docs could get out of sync with the other docs, because essentially a lot of that is duplicate information when it comes to the specification itself. My worry is that they could theoretically get out of sync.
They will. If they can in theory, they will do in practice for sure.
What's that?
They will do in practice for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're okay. So part of this reorg and the objective by the end of the week is to have a freeze or release version 090 of the repo. I'm not sure how else one would track it. You're saying they shouldn't even be in this repo; they should only be somewhere else.
No. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, like, for example, you have a section for Perl type.
Yeah.
And with and without the Ecma, for example, it's basically going to be the same content, correct?
No, not really. No, I was expecting the Ecma would be very specific, and that the other one could be more expansive.
Okay.
So the idea was, the other documents are primarily oriented toward being documentation on the website. So I can work on the names of them, but no, the intent is that they're, Ecma, we want to be reasonably succinct for the broader audience. We're probably going to have a more expansive view. So I agree, we need to make sure the naming isn't confusing.
Okay.
But no, what the intent was not that they would be exactly the same.
Okay. All right.
And that's part of the whole standard versus spec. Right? We want to freeze the standard and figure out the process for any changes to that being more rigorous than, more the specification as a whole, having a more expansive view of things, if that makes sense.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Okay.
But I like the structure.
Okay, good. Well, I was looking for that feedback, and so that we can proceed with the changes.
I like very much the structure. I have one comment, which is what's at the root.
What's at the root?
Yes.
I don't. The root docs? You mean just docs?
No. The root of the repo. I don't see anything anymore. So what's going to be left at the root of the repository? Here I see all the directories, subdirectories.
Yeah, and then there'll be a bunch of the files at the bottom. I didn't worry about the sort order. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
The root files are still there. They're just at the bottom of the list. This is just for planning. This is not the literal.
Okay, fair enough. No. Just so I wasn't seeing that. Okay, so we we're putting that README. So README will have pointers to the documentation if need be, so we'll restructure that accordingly. Okay, fair enough. I'm good.
Right.
Then.
Looks
Right.
like we got two different indexes. We've got
Yeah,
Perl
yep.
types.
Yeah, let me, I'll remove that one.
Okay.
Let me just make a note. Yeah, that was originally there, and it was originally there, and then it got moved to the root. So.
Okay, so we're keeping it in the root then?
That's my understanding.
The index? Okay, that's fine. I'm not opinionated.
Yeah. Is that correct, Philippe? Is there any reason we wouldn't keep it at the root?
Yeah, yes, I like single flat directories with bad unit files in it, so don't tempt me too much. So let's keep that one. I will be for.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I love a directory with 1,000 files personally. So.
And me not so much, but we'll figure that out. Okay. Well, this basically makes sense. There's going to have to be some adjustments as we go. I am directly updating that issue with the changes rather than putting them in the comments. So the top of that directory represents what we're planning. And then after we get through the Perl spec reorg, we are going to go in parallel. The royal we meaning John and I, and with Philippe's help, and do something similar for VERS spec. Although, at the moment, I think our best target is that we get the VERS spec to the General Assembly mid 2026. We're obviously not going to be able to do it for this year, so we'll update that. Then we have someone new. Welcome, Elizabeth.
When were you planning to do all this move of files?
This week.
Directories?
This week. We've been pending this meeting and general discussion, and so just on a general timeline, we get that. The idea is to get it basically in shape. Do the release tag for V090, and then the next few weeks have people giving us feedback on it. Obviously, we want that, and also surfacing. Solveig sort of mentioned something I've seen the PR, but I haven't really looked at closely. If there's any significant flaws in the spec that run right up against pending Perl type additions, we need to address those. So John is working on a triage list of the Perl type additions so that we can figure out which ones to work. We have some groups that are already using the new format, and we'll need an issue template and so on for that. There's others that are for, my sense is to prioritize Perl types that are being actively worked on, and ones that are fairly obviously big repos or very common package repos, even if no one's working on them. And in those cases, we may submit the PR on behalf of the person if they don't respond or can't respond. And that'll just be a slice of the additions, but we have plenty of backlog of different and a variety of Perl type adds. And we'll also look at the changes, but I've just, we'll come up with a list and share it of just the ones we think we need to take on. We can't take them all on. It's too many, but we have a mixture of issues, pull requests, issues with pull requests. So essentially testing the key will be testing the schema against these use cases and seeing if there's, it's just translation of terms and so on, because it's been so long since we formalized this, or is there actually a fundamental issue we can't handle? But as we've discussed before, there are nuances that people have been proposing that may be deferred by keeping the spec simple for now and then planning ahead. But what we're looking for is the ones that say, no, that just absolutely won't work. So we've had the namespace discussion, and our resolution with that was namespace is optional. So we keep namespace, and we made it very easy for people putting in a Perl type to say we don't use namespaces. And so therefore any tool should be able to interpret that pretty quickly and not get confused about whether there's namespace data there or not, right? I think that's an example of a decision we made to keep things simple, but not go back and remove namespace. So we're looking to that level of spec issue rather than over specification at this time. But that, we'll figure this out, but I'm guessing by November, December, we'll be able to figure out whether we need a plan for version 1.1 for mid-year next year. I don't have, that's not my opinion that it needs to be, but it could very well be the case that we'll need, that we'll have new things that we want to add. But again, I think our philosophy is keep it as simple as possible to avoid issues of deprecating things that people have now learned about and add things in rather than try and add it all in to start. So I think we've been pretty well agreed on that. So that's a quick update. Please bear with us. I know it's messy right now in both spaces, but I don't.
Yeah. And so let me share briefly my screen so everybody looks at that, and welcome Elizabeth, by the way. Thank you for joining.
Hello. Yeah.
So
hi.
Basically, right now, the structure of the Perl spec repo, the major changes with the merger of the schema is that we have a directory with schemas. One, which is a schema that defines what is a Perl type. The other one is just a list of types. And what is a test for Perls. Now, just so everybody understands what's a type and what's a test. Well, let's take something which is likely to be simple and non-contentious, cargo. The cargo is the package type for Rust cargo crates. And basically what we're saying, it's called cargo, it's described as cargo. It uses a repository, the default one is crates. There's no namespace, it's actually prohibited to use namespace at this stage. The name is the name, the version is the version. You don't do simpler and sweeter than this. And there's a few examples. So that's the type definition, and then we have code that we can update as we like, which is the code for the generated documentation for cargo. We generate Markdown, and we can probably evolve that also to integrate that as part of the website. There's a Python script for that. It's super easy to join and evolve the way we want. But all that is generated, meaning we've removed I'd say the artistic license, using a weird term that's dear to the Perl and Raku people. We're removing the artistic license that's left to the authors when writing definitions, because everything is JSON now. Important to understand is that this definition here, this definition there, they're not part of the Ecma standard at this stage. Maybe in the future we can decide that. What's part of the Ecma standard is this puppy here, which is the type definition, which is the schema to validate the type definition JSON against. So that's the big reorganization here. Related to this is also not part of related to this and not part of the standard. And we have to decide whether we want, we have to decide whether we want that to be part of the standard is the schema that's here to define what is a Perl test. So
we were proposing that for that was what we were talking about earlier about section 7 of the of the spec. So the current proposal is that schema, not the tests themselves, but the schema would be part of the spec. I mean, the standard of the standard.
Yeah, makes sense. And these tests, if you look at one test or some of these, we have two levels: spec level test and types level. So I think we have to make the schema part of the spec, because there's another problem, which is conformance with the specification. Right. So if we look at the cargo test suite here, basically we have a list of tests which says, hey, it's part of the base test group. It's to parse a test. It's a parse test. If you get that as an input, you are expected to produce this as an output, and it's not expected to fail. So therefore, there's no failure reason. So that's the way it reads. It's as unambiguous as possible. You get that as an input, you're expected to have these expected decoded components for the Perl. And then you have, of course, a larger number of these. The point is the intent is to say the base test group is eventually evaluating the conformance to the base core spec versus something which would be an advanced, well, okay, we don't have any in this one. Another case would be an advanced test. Maybe on Debian here. Yeah, that would be an advanced test, which is, I don't know why it's called advanced there. But it is expected to be something that only some parsers which have some libraries which have more advanced support are able to do. Doesn't need all these tests are perfect, and they need to be, they need some TLC. But the point is that we have these two levels, base and advanced, and the intent was to say base goes to the standard potentially, versus advanced goes to the spec, but not the Ecma standard. That's up for discussion.
Well, the other way to think about it, I think about it, Philippe, is that the base tests are pass-fail, and the advanced tests are more like a grade. There's a gradient of ways you can interpret things and improve them. No?
No. Okay. All the tests are designed to be pass or fail. Some tests are designed to be explicit failure. For instance, if you have an input which is, whichever way you look at it, completely ambiguous and never parsable, then it's expected that you fail that test in all cases. But it could be that the same test is expected to fail for the base profile, whereas a recovering lenient parser is able to get the stuff recovered in the advanced test group.
Okay, well, we'll need a good explanation of that for the
so
section 7. But
yeah,
I don't need a definitive decision today, but we probably need to absolutely be firm on that by the next Ecma call 2 weeks from now.
Yes.
Which is which test do we put as part of the conformance section of the spec or not, if any?
Well, I think it's, if we use the test group base as an example, I would love to include text in the conformance section of the standard that actually then requires, if you want to be conformant to Perl, you need to be able to pass all the base tests.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good enough then.
Yeah, and if somebody can kind of write up that text, we can kind of vote on that text in the next, meeting, whatever. That would be ideal in my opinion. Now, if you go back to the actual definition schema itself, not the type, but the actual definition schema. Yeah, that one. Pretty much everything in Perl is optional except for the name. And I believe does name have a default of required? Because when you were showing the cargo example, it didn't show requirement is required.
Yeah. It's not sure that required because there's no option to have a norm. It's not optional to have a name.
Correct. But for automation purposes.
So the intent is if it's so the way I designed this, and we can change it if you think that's too ambiguous, is we have a Perl component definition. It's going to be reused further down for namespace, name, version, and so on. Right? We're saying whether it's what are the permitted characters, if there's something which is a subset of what's permitted in the core spec, is it case sensitive, and what are text narratives about normalization, because we are not at a stage where we can really specify these satisfactorily. And what is the native name? It's called, for instance, artifact ID in Maven, then that's the name. And then if we go further down, we have something which is a definition for each component. So here, next space has also a requirement which says it's required or not, it's optional or not optional, plus the standard Perl definition here. Name doesn't have that at this stage because it's always required, so it doesn't make sense. Version, it's.
But you haven't explicitly said that.
Yeah.
Unless does the Perl component definition explicitly say that name is required?
No.
Right.
Because name, so do we have
So we're
something?
it's sort of conceptually inherited from the top level definitions, and I think what you're saying, Steve, is it should be more explicit, even though it's effectively inherited.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was
thinking
trying
of
to
really
cut down. Okay, go ahead.
I'm thinking of really dumb tools that just consume the spec and start using it. They're not going to know all the rules that are in the specification, in the English specification. They're just looking at what's in the schema, what's required, what's not.
You have a very good point. Now, the thing is, there's something to consider here is that, so take Java. In Java, you always must have a namespace, otherwise your thing is not a proper Maven component, a Maven package, right? I'm okay for you to give me a Perl that doesn't have a version and that's not fully qualified. Because there's things I can do with this. It's not perfect, but I can do a lot of things. If you give me a Perl which doesn't have a name, it's completely, utterly useless. So the question, how can we capture the fact that you don't have fully defined Perls which are still useful versus things which is completely useless otherwise?
I think what we're talking about is that in the definition for a type, that even though it's mandated at a higher level, if someone's just looking at the types and they go to name definition, it would be helpful to them to see the required field.
Right. Yeah. So there's two ways you can do this. There's two ways you can do it. You can set the default in the schema itself to required for a Perl name, or you can go to every single type that you have, and for the name, you would set requirement:required. I prefer the first one because you just do it in one place and all the Perl types kind of inherit that. But
okay, for all components, and I understand it's going to be clear.
It's a one minor change. Yeah.
It's going to be much cleaner. And so what we can do is, there's maybe a few rare cases where some qualifiers are required. But the question is whether we want to make version definition required all the time from a schema point of view. So it's really important from a standard point of view here. So it's Perl in general, but Perl in the standard in particular is let's take a practical example. So if I have this, so if I have this is a valid Perl, fair. Do you consider this as a valid Perl? True.
Yes.
Okay. So then we make the version optional, and we'll add a bit of a comment, probably in the core spec, saying it's okay to have a Perl without version, but be aware that it may not be able to be exactly resolvable to actual artifacts. Or if you take a very popular package, say Django on PyPI, if you put no versions, you literally have 1,000, if not 5,000 actual Perls that could resolve to that one versionless Perl.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's all about granularity. And if you require version, then you are literally like shooting VERS in the foot. You'll never be able to adopt it.
Yeah,
But if you can use the thing without the version, you now have greater opportunities to use VERS.
Yeah, completely agreed. Okay, that's clear.
Yeah, I mean, with name and no version is valid, not useful in a lot of use cases, but useful in some use cases. I think it's kind of the point. Nisha had a comment about, and then she had to go away for a second, about dividing requirements into categories, but I'm not sure quite what that means.
Oh, I'm back. No, just thinking about, like, usually like conformance checkers have requirements that are strict or lax. I don't know if that you've considered dividing your requirements into categories. Like if you don't have a version, then it's lax. And if you do, it's like kind of a default, I suppose. Then if you need like the extra qualifiers, then it's strict. Or maybe even like configure it in the tooling based on what your needs are.
Yeah. So the notion of requirement here is slightly different. It's about saying if the Perl component, so say namespace, name of versions, are required. Let me show you the definition here. You see, we have an enumeration, whether it's required, optional, or prohibited. So that's the intent here. What you're saying is slightly different and probably goes more to this notion of test groups, which is to say it's strict or lax, and a strict parser would reject this input, a strict builder would reject this input, a lax parser builder would accept this input, which is probably what I call base and advanced. And
yeah, I'm not.
To your point is also, no, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, the reason why I'm thinking in that direction is simply because of your first comment, which is that you don't necessarily require a whole lot of like values in a for a string to be considered Perl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what that means is that it's based on whatever context you're operating the Perl in, and so the idea is like, you know, you have to have some way of communicating the context in which you're operating in. So not just like the package type, but also like the way in which you're using the package, or the way in which you're intending to use the package. So you can either be like, you know, I don't care, it's here, use it as you wish, or it can be like, you know, I made modifications to it, and it is meant to be used as, you know, in this kind of application specifically. But I don't know how to structure that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I know how to structure that. I understand the principle. If you want to take a stab, just drop even a rough sketchy issue, and then the question becomes whether it's something we want or not in the current standard as opposed to the spec. I don't think at this stage we cannot probably produce more of this, but just put that as an issue so at least we can consider it. We're really trying to close on the standard for Ecma yesterday, or last week actually, 2 weeks ago, 1 month ago.
Okay, but we got to do it now. Yeah.
That's
So
true.
again, for context, Nisha, we're trying to keep the standard part to a minimum for now, and we'll be working on the spec and enhancing the spec and use cases and things like that through December, because that can go in parallel while the core standard is being evaluated by Ecma.
And
So our
yeah.
idea is to, unless we're really clear on something, keep it minimal with the idea we'll add to it later, rather than, try to figure out more complex issues right now where we're, we need to get the stake in the ground, if you will, because it's been so amorphous for so long.
Okay. Let's move on. Otherwise, there's so very briefly, spec of the license of the spec. There's been before I go there, very briefly, we were finishing the documentation, the discussion on the structure. So the verse specification has been split in its own repo. It's been split, but also it's based on the fork of the Perl spec, which has been then trimmed down. So everything we have in terms of history is there, and the whole line history of everything is there in the README, for instance, melts. That's an important thing. And what's working there, the issues have been moved over. Right now, I'm working on specifically well, it looks a bit ugly because it's actually forked from the schema for Perl, but the schema for verse tests, which are a bit more, slightly more complex than the Perl spec, but it lends itself quite well. So just giving you a bit of a heads up for progress. It's not really in the way nor critical for the Ecma standard. So next up, spec license.
Yeah, so basically, at the moment, we have an MIT license in general with a little bit of weirdness about how it's represented, but that's something to fix too. So, yeah, you can show the issue. So what I'm raising here is that MIT is a good license for software. It's fine. It's a lousy license for specifications. And within the specification side of things, we know that the core standard will be covered by the Ecma license / copyright notice. That's not really negotiable. So the question becomes, what about the other documentation / specification material that is not code? So in the code in the repo, the Perl spec repo, is primarily scripts and enablers to do various things, right? And any permissive license seems reasonable. But for the rest of the specification information, we need a more spec / doc-friendly license. There is the community specification. I'm guessing that might be overkill. Something simple like CC by 4.0, which is used lots of places for documentation, could work. And then another proposal is Apache is a bit stronger permissive license, but it also has the concept of works that aren't quite so totally bound to software. So possibly Apache could be a license for everything that's not under the Ecma license. So my main concern is that we have a license that covers the documentation and specification material not under Ecma, that is a friendly license for that type of material versus MIT or if we want to change it, any other license for the actual code, which in this case is scripts and utilities that we're using with the spec. Not, again, this is not the license for the implementations of any Perl processing. This is for the Perl spec repo.
Okay, so comments quickly on my side. First, CycloneDX using Apache, so I like that. Second, using Apache is much better well-known quantity than using community specification license, which probably is great for spec, but I've not seen it much used beyond a few Linux Foundation specifications.
It's pretty widely used in the Linux Foundation.
Yes, but no, I've not seen news anywhere outside so far. The one thing that's important here, what I heard a few people that were really not scared, but concerned about having an MIT is the lack of support for patents. They don't want a rogue contributor go and patent things on the spec. Apache license has support for that, so I'm all for that. For everything that's not part of Ecma, we'll still need to keep the the MIT below just for reference and to ensure we don't bruise any ego and feathers. MIT is sub-licensable. In all cases, we need to do that in an orderly manner so everybody is fine and okay with that move. It has little to no impact on any usage, except providing a bit more patent protection and something that's better adapted to specs, I guess. That's my take. I don't know for you, for the others otherwise.
So this is not something we have to resolve for the standard because we know what the standard will be under, but it's been floating out there for a long time. And about MIT and how it's being used. So I wanted to raise the visibility and hopefully people will comment on the issue. But we need to get something a bit better in here for everything that's not under the Ecma copyright notice.
Okay.
The Ecma, just for transparency, all the specs under TC54 are available with the royalty-free patent license. It doesn't prohibit organizations from having patents on things. What it does require, if you have patents, it just makes sure that they're freely available. People can use them without having to pay the patent holder. We chose Apache for probably similar reasons why you kind of called out. We looked at OpenAPI, for example, which Swagger and OpenAPI both use Apache, and we were like, "Huh, that's interesting." And we started looking into Apache, and there's there's really fine nuances between like the English language of a specification and then the implementation of that specification, like in a schema, for example, where you're literally using a lot of the same words. Right, because of the description on a markdown, for example, might literally just be copy and pasted to the description property in JSON schema, right? And it would be nice to have a single license that actually covered both cases, and that's kind of why we chose Apache. But I don't want to, influence. I think CC, one of the CC licenses, would be equally fine.
Okay.
Okay, well, yeah, I wanted to raise the visibility of this one and get comments. Speaking of licensing, I just want to also mention I reached out to SPDX, our old friend Gary O'Neill, and I'm on the tech team agenda on the 12th of August to just alert people to what we're doing, because the older Perl spec information was included as Appendix E in SPDX 301 or whatever. So I'm just going to give them a heads up so they can start factoring that in. Immediate reaction was, yes, if it will help us a lot for our ISO work at SPDX if in fact Perl is an Ecma standard. So that's actually something they've been worried about. I'm just going to give them a general update because we just haven't talked to them in ages. So I think that'll be well received.
Yeah, and just for the record there, the CSAF specification from OASIS, Common Security Advisory Framework, recently became an ISO standard too, in addition to OASIS, and they both reference Perl and verse. So technically, both are also de facto.
Well,
somewhat of an ISO standard.
Yeah, but Perl's been de facto for a long time. We're now going for a de jure, right? So that's the whole purpose of that exercise. Okay.
Okay. So license, we'll take it in the discussion offline. Again, to me, what's really important there is making sure we don't bruise anyone's ego or piece of anyone about the license change. People always have, rightfully or not, a lot of passion about these topics.
Right, but we need to come up with what, as a community here, what we think we should do, then do a pull request, then there'll be ample time for people to respond if they're unhappy.
Okay, the website.
Yeah, so the website topic real quickly is I saw a PR come across, Matt, for the initial website, but it was targeted at the Perl spec repo. And
that was our discussion, is that we'd leave it in Perl.
Yeah, I may have had some confusion. Well, so I may have helped with confusion there, but in general, I think our plan was that the website would be at the package URL level. So I just want to make sure that's clear, or if people disagree. But the broader idea is we'll have something called package URL. That's what that's the domain that Philippe already got, and that therefore we would have room for Perl spec, verse spec, and other things at the website level. So I don't know if that.
Let's take it to the community discussion on Wednesday. I think there's a simple resolution with Git submodules if need be. So I don't think it's in the way to have a top level repo or have it below. We can handle that in the community meeting when Matt and Tim come to present. And I don't want them to be slowed down by any of that either.
No, I appreciate that. Me and my interns are let us get it working first.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not trying. It's nothing urgent. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page about the big picture. Because if we're going to do websites for each spec, that's just it's a different approach. And I think we, as a community, we want to advocate for package URL, which covers 2 specifications.
Yeah, I already feel that I'm stretching my. These are 2 interns, and they're. But I feel greedy taking an inordinate amount of time because they're not directly reporting to me. They work for another business unit.
You stole them.
I stole them, yes, and they love.
We record it, so you kindly asked these other business units if they could loan it to you for a couple of days.
And every morning I wake up, and every hour or two they say, "How do you like this change? What should we do next?" So we're getting some nice fit and finish and stuff for next Wednesday.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, so I absolutely don't want them to be slowed down on anything. If there's adaptation to be done around the repos, we can handle that.
And we have worked on some proposed logos as well, and other.
Okay. Wonderful. Cool. Salve, Elizabeth, you have the floor. You have issues in Raku that you've discovered in the spec that you need.
Salve had to leave, Philippe. He had to go to the meeting, so. I told him we'd look at the PR.
Well, yes, I did discover some issues, but I understand that everything is still a little bit in flux. So I guess maybe I got the wrong version or something. But anyway, maybe I should introduce myself. I'm currently working a lot on the Raku programming language, formerly known as Perl 6. Before that, I was one of the people that actually made Booking grow to what it is today, Booking.com. And before that, I was one of the people that started the first commercial website development company in the Netherlands. Basically, I retired in 2012, and since then I've continued working on open source projects, initially on Perl 6 and now on Raku.
That's awesome.
I'm being searched here. Okay, good.
Yes,
anyway.
You are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've written. Oh dear.
Oh,
you will find some.
I'm still showing my screen.
Yes, you are.
Sorry. I didn't want to do that. I was trying to. Yeah.
You can Google me. You'll find that I have very distinct opinions about
Sigils.
Perl and Raku.
And Sigils.
Yeah.
Because you come up on top as something about Sigils. I have no idea what's a Sigil, but I'll find them.
That's okay. I've written quite a few blogs.
Sigils like the Sigils in the Raku language.
Sorry, the
Sigils like in the Raku language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, my idea was that basically with the whole thing happening in Europe, we need to actually make Raku ready for the future world where open source has an opportunity or has a danger in being still being used or being discarded. And I want to make sure that the Raku programming language will be going along with that and make it possible for people using Raku to get all of their stuff, SBOM stuff, in order without too much problem. And that's basically my goal that I'm working on here. And as such, I've been implementing in Raku support for the CycloneDX SBOM reading and producing, and the Perl spec and the first spec, which I just uploaded yesterday. And as such, I found some issues. I mean, but yeah, that's basically my background. And then one of the things that comes to mind at the moment is basically if we have a Perl with a version specified,
Yes.
and we have also a verse specified, is that possible? Should that be possible? Should they not? Should they be actually in accordance with each other?
So we've added recently verse as a standard qualifier to the spec.
Yeah.
So what are practical usage of the version range? There's a couple, but the main one is to be able to store an expression which resolves to many versions, which we get in vulnerabilities reports. When you have something which says all the version before version 12 of package foo are vulnerable to CV1, or when you say package foo depends on bar version 3 and higher, not version 5. These are the two main use cases.
So
in both cases, I didn't express any version. I only express a version range in what I just stated as a use case. So
okay,
you could have a use case which is to say, I've expressed a version range for a vulnerable range or a package version range for dependencies, a dependent range. And I've resolved it to a concrete version. So you could say, oh, foo at 123 as a qualifier of verse, version 1, superior to 1 and inferior to 2 as a verse qualifier. That could be a possible thing. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, but then in any case, in that case, the version should actually be included in the verse.
Yes. So
yeah,
if
it doesn't, then it's poof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we need to specify and clarify the spec there to say yes, because it makes no sense to have something which is outside of the range. I can see a compact notation to say, yes, I had a requirement of this range, and this is what I resolved to. It kind of makes sense, but
aren't you conflating users then?
Yeah, kind of. So I'm fine to say when you have a verse, you don't put a version.
Okay, then
Qualifier. I'm fine as a way.
Okay, I'll implement for now that if you have a version, then you can't have a verse, and vice versa.
Yeah, and that's something we want to put in the spec, by the way, because it's standard qualifier, so it goes into the Ecma standard.
Okay.
So
did you actually decide on the qualifier key already for verses in? I
think it's called verse.
Yeah. Okay.
There's an issue out there for it somewhere.
With no, but I think it's already been merged. Let me double check. But we were not super verse. Yes. So let me actually give you a link. It's in the known key value pairs. Actually, you know what? It's even simpler. It's already been specified exactly the way you like it.
Oh, I didn't have a preference actually, but
no, but it's already there. So whether you like it or not,
okay.
It says it's mutually exclusive with the version component, so you cannot have both.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. And,
thank you.
And that ties nicely, by the way, in the discussion we had earlier on, Steve, which is making the version explicitly optional, and ensuring that all the components have an explicit optional required or prohibited, even with the default.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, so I just didn't look at the documentation well enough. Sorry about
Well,
that.
nobody does, and no worries. That's what the documentations are done for. Just to well, there's nothing. There's nothing to say. It's a recent addition, so it's perfectly normal that you've not been able to see it before, and it's been probably a bit submerged in the other set of changes that we've gone through recently, which are a lot.
Okay, I have one further question, and that's something
Yes.
that annoys me tremendously about all of the JSON that I see. If a field is null,
Yeah.
why is it mentioned at all? Should it be mentioned at all? Can it be removed? Because I try to basically, if I read something like that as a human, I'd rather not have see all the nulls there basically meaning nothing.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. As a way.
My question is has there been a decision on that, whether that should be a...
No,
Okay.
not really. Go ahead, Matt.
I would say from a code perspective and from a readability perspective, I'd rather have, for a specification point of view, have the intentional empty fields in there. And then when you actually do the parsing and bring those things into the language structures themselves, you can do things like omit empty. And so they don't appear in actually the code structures. But from a specification point of view, I'd rather have the positive assertion that this is intentionally left blank. Adding statements for the words intentionally left blank. I'd like that intent.
Okay.
And yeah, so Elizabeth, just sharing my screen again. Basically, to make sure we're clear, we're talking about something like that here, right? Where you have a bunch of null fields.
Yeah.
And so I'm split on the topic. There's I use a lot of data as YAML in the open source tools I write. And in this case, the default is that if there's no value, the field doesn't show up. So there's no this field intentionally left blank kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when I wrote the schema for the test, and I'm fine to change it if there's an agreement there. I came a bit with the agreement, the direction of Matt.
Yeah, when you do a load and you get language bindings, and you load these things into maps typically, and you write, and people will make more mistakes writing code because they'll assume that these fields exist in their code and dereference them. And if they don't appear at all in the map key, you get lots of errors. I'd rather have them, the person who's running the bindings and loading them, saying I want to leave them off, because that leaves fewer programming errors, or in terms of unintended consequences downstream.
That's why I did that here, to make it simpler on the consumers. So it's a bit harder on the producers because you have to write stupid nulls.
Okay.
But as Matt said, when you read the map, you're guaranteed from the spec if test type is sparse, expected failure is false, then you have an object in expected output which has all these keys. If it doesn't, the test shouldn't be in the first place in the repo.
Okay.
And it should fail validation on the schema. That will be the intent. But my programmer self, which likes concise, removing the craft when possible, doesn't like that. And I test happily for presence of members in the map to decide whether they're there or not and what do I do. Actually, I do that all the time in all cases, even on this code.
And I'll admit that on the output side, like for CycloneDX, I omit on the way out. So, but on the way in, from a specification point of view, purview, being obtuse and have everything present.
Okay, fair enough.
So
Thank
now
you.
it's the test. So again, we can revisit that because I'm not inclined to have extra stuff for no reason. We could. So
No,
for the
not,
same reason.
especially not
Go
for a
ahead.
test case. For test cases, everything should be explicit.
Okay. For the same reason, I made these two fields always present, even though the default is that an expected failure of false, meaning you don't expect the test to fail, is the command default. But I wanted to make sure it was explicit all the times. Again, to make it simpler when you read, so all the fields are present and you don't have, it makes the processing slightly easier.
Fair
So
enough.
it
It was just a question for me getting exposed to this for the first time, I guess, in this way, shape, and form. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you've reported a bazillion of excellent issues, by the way, on the topic. There's a lot of tests which are problematic, which needs to
I
be
noticed.
No, but so
Despite my reaction, as an exercise, mental exercise, I enjoyed that. So, so thanks.
Okay, so there's one last thing, but I don't think we'll have the time to address it today, which I'd like to revisit probably in the community meeting and next time, which is the problem with Go. And
What's the problem with Go? Refresh my memory.
Go is problematic because it's different from any other language. So I just want to put a heads up there. We've discussed it a couple of times, the community meetings. I'd like to make sure we revisit one last time on Wednesday on whether we put something in the Ecma standard 1.0 or not. The problem is this. Do we use a subpass like it is here, where this is a Go module here, and this is a Go package afterwards? Or do we come with a slightly different approach, which is to say, let's not encode / anywhere, because they're not ambiguous anywhere. So it's really core spec change. And let's say that interpreting the name and namespace is type specific, including the parsing of the name and namespace. And in the case of Go, what this means is that eventually this whole string here, removing the pound, would become what they call the package name. There's no namespace in the terms in that sense in Go. It's just a long package string. So just planting a seed, but let's discuss that in the community discussion. We've discussed that many times. We said, no, we won't put it in the Ecma standard, but I have second thought. And that's the last time to have this second thought will be this next Wednesday.
Okay, we'll add that to the agenda, but
Yeah.
the first agenda item for the community meeting will be the website.
Yeah, completely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering here with the thing about the note, the namespace must be lowercase. Shouldn't that be part of the spec? That it is something that you can actually, now you have to parse the note to know whether something has to be lowercase?
No, actually, no, it's been made part of the definition here. Case sensitive false.
That implies being lowercase?
Well, it's
Because
actually
in the CPAN
the notes are wrong. It's actually, thank you. The notes are wrong because the namespace must not be lowercase. In particular, Go supports, so the Go path are case sensitive.
The reason I'm asking is because in the CPAN type, the namespace must be uppercased.
Whereas here, actually, that's so there's a lot of warts in Go because it has a lot of problems. But you can have packages that have so the package path are case sensitive, and they even have the weirdest convention to lowercase it using exclamation marks to tag uppercase letters that were lowercased. Just if you want to know about it for a second.
Okay.
It's you don't want to know about it, but
I know.
just so you know about it, in Go, you actually have something which is it's a way to escape. Basically, they have a convention to escape uppercase letters to this weird expression, which is the ordinal value of the character with a prefix with an exclamation mark. That's go. Everything is weird. So some people used to think that Perl and Raku were weird, but they're not. No worries, they're cool.
Well, at least in Raku you can specify any Unicode letter character as in an identifier, which poses all sorts of problems. And so we have this.
I can imagine, like
insensitive
and confusing homonyms and glyphs.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope it didn't disrupt too much.
No, not at all. Sorry for taking you at the last minute, at the last, because you joined live, so you have the last spot. Matt, Elizabeth, John, Michael, thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day, weekend, or night.
Likewise.
See you
Likewise.
on Wednesday. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao.
Turning the recording off.